In the summer of 1969, the entire world turned its eyes to the sky. Millions of people gathered around television sets, radios, and newspapers to witness something that humanity had dreamed of for centuries. The possibility of stepping onto another world was no longer just a story from science fiction. It was becoming reality. The Apollo 11 mission was born out of a fierce competition between two global superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. This rivalry, known as the space race, was not just about technology. It was about pride, influence, and proving which ideology could push the boundaries of human achievement. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy famously declared that America would send a man to the moon and return him safely to Earth before the decade was out. At that moment, the U.S. had barely managed a few short space flights. But Kennedy's bold promise ignited an ambitious project unlike anything seen before. NASA began pouring resources, brainpower, and determination into what became the Apollo program. Thousands of scientists, engineers, and workers dedicated years of their lives to one singular goal: landing a human being on the moon. After several missions to test rockets, systems, and procedures, the time had finally come. On July 16, 1969, a massive Saturn V rocket stood tall at Cape Kennedy. Atop it sat three astronauts who would become household names: Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. As the engines roared to life, the ground shook. Flames and smoke engulfed the base of the rocket, and slowly, the most powerful machine ever built lifted off the Earth, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire planet. The journey to the moon took 4 days. Inside the cramped spacecraft, the astronauts experienced weightlessness, navigated carefully, and prepared themselves for the most dangerous landing attempt in history. Michael Collins remained in orbit around the moon, piloting the command module. Meanwhile, Armstrong and Aldrin entered a smaller lander called the Lunar Module, nicknamed Eagle. On July 20th, the Eagle began its descent toward the lunar surface. What followed was a tense moment filled with alarms, computer overloads, and dwindling fuel. Mission Control in Houston could barely breathe as Armstrong took manual control to avoid a rocky crater. With just seconds of fuel left, Armstrong guided the lander to a safe spot. His calm voice broke the silence. "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." Cheers erupted around the world. People hugged, cried, and celebrated, as humans had finally reached another celestial body. Hours later came the most iconic moment. As Armstrong carefully climbed down the ladder and placed his boot on the dusty surface, he spoke the immortal words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Buzz Aldrin soon joined him, describing the view as magnificent desolation. For a short time, humanity existed on two worlds at once. The astronauts planted the American flag, set up scientific experiments, and collected lunar rocks. They left behind equipment, a plaque, and even a symbolic gesture of peace: medals honoring Soviet cosmonauts who had died in earlier missions. After spending about 21 hours on the lunar surface, Armstrong and Aldrin rejoined Collins in orbit. Together, the three men began their journey back home. On July 24, 1969, their spacecraft splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. The mission was complete. Humanity had conquered the moon. But not everyone was convinced. Almost immediately, conspiracy theories began to circulate. Some claimed that the entire Apollo 11 mission was staged, filmed in a studio by NASA and the U.S. government. These claims argued that the moon landing was a hoax designed to trick the world, to show America's dominance over the Soviet Union without actually going to space. Skeptics pointed to photographs and videos. They questioned the waving of the flag, the absence of stars in the background, and the way shadows appeared on the lunar surface. To them, it seemed like evidence of stage lights, special effects, or Hollywood trickery. The idea of a faked moon landing gained traction in books, documentaries, and even popular culture. For some people, it became easier to believe in deception than in the incredible feat of science and engineering. But when examined closely, these claims fall apart. The flag seemed to wave not because of wind, but because of the way it was designed with a horizontal rod to keep it extended. The lack of stars in photos was due to camera exposure settings, which were adjusted for the bright lunar surface, not the dim stars. As for the shadows, they behaved exactly as they should in an environment with a single light source, the sun, and the reflective surface of the moon creating unusual lighting effects. Scientific evidence strongly confirms the reality of the moon landings. Over 800 pounds of lunar rocks were brought back, studied by scientists around the world, and proven to be unlike any rocks found on Earth. Additionally, retroreflectors placed on the moon by Apollo missions still work today. Scientists can bounce lasers off them to measure the exact distance between Earth and the moon, proof that human hands placed them there. Even the Soviet Union, America's greatest rival, tracked the Apollo missions. If there had been a hoax, no one would have had more incentive to expose it than the Soviets. Yet they acknowledged the U.S. achievement. Technology from Apollo also paved the way for countless innovations. From computer microchips to advanced materials, the mission left behind more than footprints. It left a technological legacy. The astronauts themselves spoke passionately about their experiences. Neil Armstrong was known for his humility, avoiding fame, but never doubting the reality of what he had accomplished. Buzz Aldrin became an outspoken advocate for space exploration, pushing humanity to aim for Mars. Michael Collins reflected on the loneliness and beauty of orbiting the moon alone, calling it a profound and humbling experience. The Apollo 11 mission was more than just a victory in the space race. It was a demonstration of what humanity could achieve when driven by curiosity, ambition, and collective effort. To this day, the images of Armstrong's first step inspire millions. They remind us that boundaries are meant to be crossed and that the impossible can become possible. Conspiracy theories may continue to exist, but they do not erase the truth. The courage of the astronauts, the brilliance of the scientists, and the determination of thousands of people made Apollo 11 real. Looking back, the mission reminds us that history is not shaped by doubt, but by daring. And the legacy of Apollo 11 will always stand as one of humanity's greatest triumphs. The footprints on the moon remain untouched, silently testifying to a moment when humankind reached beyond the Earth and touched the stars. Every time we look up at the moon, we are reminded of that leap. A leap that proves we are capable of so much more than we imagine. And as new generations dream of returning to the moon and venturing to Mars, the story of Apollo 11 will continue to guide and inspire the next great chapter of exploration.